Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show to talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Blindspot. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I love the intro where we have Rich getting all those snacks for everybody. Obviously, Patterson's not too happy about what he got because she's like, I told you 1,000 times that tastes like crap or whatever. And Tasha's like, she's totally fine with it. But then Rich is like, yeah, the fact of the matter is, if you have such a problem with what I got, have a problem with the person who created the chore wheel. All right, who was that? That was you. So obviously Rich also gives Zapata something, and I'm like, what did he give her? I was like, it looked like it was an envelope or something. So I was like, I guess, because at first I was like, it's money, but then we find out what it is later on. We'll get to it soon enough. I was like, oh, it must have been money she needed to do what she needed to do. She, obviously Rich didn't ask too many questions. I like that literally Rich is at the center of so many goddamn secrets this episode. It's crazy. But then like he's like, if you ever need someone to talk, I'm DTF, and she's like, excuse me. He's like, down to find time to talk this out and stuff like that. And she's like, I'll keep that in mind. I'm like, did he not realize the initials he had said that? Like, I didn't know if he realized that. But whatever the case may be, obviously they're still looking into the bomb that obviously they found out, like, okay, this is the device that Madeline and the Dobrzan are using. So, but it turns out the only thing they can find in the files is the date, because it turns out it's the same thing the Dobrzan was trying to get Jane and Kurt to steal previously. So only thing they were able to find was like when it was like put into FBI custody, and it turns out the date of that is the first day that Zapata ended up and she joined the New York office. That was her first day at the New York office at FBI. And you're like, I was like, oh, that's interesting how that ends up kind of playing out like that. Because it's interesting because the episode like ended up kind of dealing with everyone's past a little bit except for Rich. I was almost halfway expecting in some shape or form that this would connect, to like literally everyone. Because the only people it connects to is Kurt, Reed, Tasha, and Patterson, no Jane or Rich. But, that's why I was kind of hoping it would, but it didn't. It was also interesting because, side note, they said like, oh, this was like 10 years ago. It's 2011, so it should be 9 years. But then I forgot. Season 2's finale, because season 3 takes place 2 years later. Like, there was a time skip in season 2's finale, so it was like, it went like, 2 years. So yeah, I forgot. So technically, I think it's 2021 in timeline-wise in Blindspot. I forgot about that because that was like the biggest time skip difference in the grand scheme of things. Regardless, it was just something interesting. I was like, oh right, there totally is. It's actually a little bit ahead of like real life time. Regardless, tangents and all that. And I think it was kind of an interesting plot device they used for the episode, because basically they're trying to get any details they can, and it's up to Tasha, but Tasha's memory's fuzzy. Part of me was wondering, is it simply because it's Reed? But to be fair, once again, it's 10 years ago. Like, 10 years is a very, very long time, so obviously your memory's going to be fuzzy anyway, but part of me was wondering, because for her, the only thing in her mind that was in focus was Reed, but then there's the whole thing of like, her, because the interesting thing is finding out her and Reed actually didn't like each other their first dating met. It's kind of interesting. They eventually became best friends who eventually had the very like, will they or won't they type of relationship, and then they eventually did, but and obviously this still has to hit even harder because it's not, once again, 2 months doesn't mean anything. Obviously, losing Reed still hits hard. Like, this is someone that we can see has been by her side for the past 10 years. So, like, something like that friendship, that companionship, like, that's not something that's just going to heal overnight. No, like, meaningful relationship will, just heal overnight like that, So, obviously, Rich as well as Patterson are trying to get her to remember any details at all. It's like, okay, you say you took down this group that was going to do some like deadly poison or something, and you can't remember. And Tasha's like, do I have to remind you how many times this very team has saved the world? And he's like, point taken. So it is a situation of like, yeah, like her, because it also brought up Fisher. I was like, Jesus, that's a name and a face we haven't seen in years. I was like, holy shit. It's like, oh yeah, this is before he was secretly a bad guy that, a mole that we ended up having to take out. It's like, once again, it's one of those situations when you look back at the show, you're like, there have been a goddamn lot of moles in the FBI, in particular the FBI, their branch. I wonder, has any other branch of the FBI, like in any other city, like had to deal with that as much as they have? Because it's like, there's been mole after mole. It would have been dope because Mayfair's name comes up, so it would have been dope if we could have seen it like one time, but it's like, I guess that just would have been too much. But I just thought it was interesting in the grand scheme of things. Because obviously, like, and what was also interesting too, because like, Reed is dressed down, and even I took notes. I was like, I was like, never really saw him dressed down that much. And even Fisher's commenting on him, I was like, and we kind of, see later on that he's wearing a suit. I'm like, oh, so Fisher's actually the reason why you start wearing a suit, because 99% of the time you saw Reed, he was always wearing a suit, and now you kind of understand why. Unless it was like, obviously he was wearing like, body armor or something like that because they were during an operation. But more often than not, throughout the office, he was rarely in just like casual clothes. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. It just kind of, you can't help but immediately notice it, because that was just an aspect of his character, and you realize like, oh, like Fisher, even though that dude being the dick that he was, kind of accepted that into like Reed's mind. But regardless, what was interesting though is like, because obviously they had one particular case file and it dealt with like some poisons, but she can't remember all the details for her. But then she clears it up. It's like, no, there was detail about one particular poison, but another one was omitted. So they went, it's like, I don't know, we went to see some random lab tech. And I love that when you look, if you pause it and look, literally the name tag says random tech. And they're talking to her and everything, and then Patterson's like, whoa, describe this tech, and it's like, I don't know, weird, awkward. She's like, that was me, Tasha. She's like, no, she's like, who else says opposite except for me? And then Tasha's like, holy crap, that was you. I'm like, I love that. I mean, to be fair, it's like your memory's fuzzy, so you might not remember the details all that much, especially people's faces and stuff. So I just thought that was interesting, and I love that Rich is poking fun of her. He's like, oh, great first impression. If Tasha can't even remember that's when she met you. And it's just like, but in her defense, you guys all look the same when you're wearing those white lab coats. And she's like, okay. Also love he's calling it the Death Gas 2000. Patter's like, we're not calling it that. He does it, Death Gas 2000. We're still not calling it that. And then later on, it's like, Death Gas 2000. Rich is like, yes. But nevertheless, but obviously for her, it eventually got to the point she didn't want to keep remembering anymore, because the only thing that, once again, was in clear focus was Reed, and it was just too painful. It's just a constant reminder that he's not there anymore. And obviously at the same time, like, it's Bethany's birthday, and obviously it's hitting Kurt hard, because he wants to be there for his daughter. It's like, this is the first birthday he hasn't been with her. So it's like, obviously Allie's going to explain everything, but it's like, how do you explain your dad being on a run, being wanted by them? Like, how do you explain that to a 4-year-old? It's like, you don't, but it's like, so it's hard for him. He's trying to keep busy and everything. So Jane, wanting to surprise him, is like, yeah, can you track down Allie and Bethany? I think it'd mean the world to Kurt. Let's keep this, hush hush. And I forgot what it was that Rich was saying something. He was like, no, never mind. I'll get right to it. And so secretly working on that. And so obviously this puts Kurt and Tasha in a very similar position to, like, I mean, to be fair, like, Patterson's the same way too, obviously missing her dad like crazy. It's kind of sad because, like, at the core of it, like, well, I'm about to go on a tangent, but never mind. The fact of the matter is, Kurt's talking to her. Is like, I get, like, how painful it is being away from someone. She's like, I know you realize that, but he's like, the fact of the matter is, obviously this is very important. And so I love even Rich was suggesting, like, trying to hypnotize her. I was almost hoping, like, are we actually going to go down that route? But it's like, no, we never went down that route. Because he was like, I need some scent. He was like, I need some candle, like, I need some incense, I need a quail feather and stuff like that. And they're like, no. But the fact of the matter is, Tasha starts remembering, like, the lady they were interviewing, because they called in a scientist about, like, these chemicals and stuff like that. I even love, like, obviously Fisher chewed them out about it. Then eventually they followed her. And I also love that Kurt, like, they got chewed out by Kurt. And literally it's like, what do you have to say? And Kurt's literally barking, and he's like, whoa, I don't sound like that. And Rich is like, you do at first, but then you kind of get used to it. And then Jane is like, you kind of do bark. He's like, all right, even though I scolded you and reprimanded you, which was right, like, the fact of the matter is, things about that lady Carrie Coleman, it didn't sit well with either one of them. Like, it's just a thing of, like, yeah, like, even during the interrogation they were kind of stepping over each other's shoes and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, so what ends up happening is they're like, yeah, there's something not right about this lady. So they had, like I said, they had followed her, and she was trying to remember, some details about the lady. They narrow down a search. They pull up some people, but there's no one's at the pot of mention. But then they're like, wait, you told us this, like it was like a Hudson University or something like that, but it's like, oh, what you said is something completely different. So they change it, and then they present Carrie, and it's a different person from in Tasha's mind, but then her mind kind of unhazes and she sees her face, and it's like boom, and it's like right. So once again, it's just funny how memory is. So it's like, this is Carrie Coleman, but then Jane recognizes like last episode I shot at this lady, and it's like, wait, she's part of the Darbazon. So a lady you guys crossed paths with 10 years ago, it turns out she's part of the Darbazon and is working with Madeline to do this bomb. So the exact same thing that was being used back then is coming to fruition now. So it's interesting. So because obviously the whole thing was like, obviously the Darbazon were after this device last season, so it's like, so that means they've been after this for a long time. It seems like this has been a long time coming then. It's like, if this is dating back to then, but at the very least they didn't have access to the device back then, but now it's like maybe the Darbazon ended up bringing her into the fold like more recently, making this a part of her plan and everything, because like once again the device got stolen, because like Carrie's been missing since like 2011. She's been missing like the past 10 years. So it is a situation of them kind of, Reed and Tasha piecing things together. And I love, like, it's like they go to Kurt, and Kurt's like, all right, we'll pass this on to someone else. They're like, no, we want to finish this. So there's only room for one person on the team. They're like, I totally understand. It should be, Zapata's like, it should be Reed. And Reed's like, no, it should be Zapata. He's like, we don't have time for this. I'm going to take both of you. I'm like, hey. And you see them walking. It's like almost slow-mo. You see everyone in the office almost turn to look at them. It's like, hey, this is where the A-team formed. This is literally the beginnings of the A-team. So I just thought that was kind of, neat. Sadly, another angle to this whole situation is that Rich looked into like some of the aliases and stuff like that and found out that Bethany is in a hospital, and Jane's like obviously he's like, all right, we got to tell Kurt, but she's like, we can't tell Kurt, because she's like, knowing Kurt, he'll rush there immediately, and he's not going to think straight. He's his daughter and everything, but it's like, look into it, because if we tell Kurt now, he's just going to go flying off the handle. At least if we can make sure it is Bethany and find out what's wrong with her, at least we can come to Kurt with something. So Rich is kind of keeping that buried until like he looks into it, and it's like, hey, it turns out she has an affection. And part of me is like, my mind immediately was like, you don't think this has anything to do with what's going on right now? I mean, to be fair, it's not like Allie could necessarily like reach out to them, but it's like, oh, we got to tell Kurt now. But it's like, because obviously something Reed had said, I mean, not Reed, Rich had actually said earlier, he had said like, oh yeah, when has keeping secrets ever backfired on this team? It's like, oh yeah, like that's the truest thing ever, because that's backfired in the biggest way multiple times. But it's a situation of, obviously Kurt comes over because he hears something. He's like, well, don't tell me what. And then Jane tells him, and he gets pissed, because it's like, it wasn't your decision to make, to not tell me. It's like, but obviously it's like, even you said it yourself. If I had told you sooner, you would have rushed off to go, to America, and that just wouldn't do, you be putting yourself as well as them in danger. Like, it would compromise everything. Like, the sooner we deal with this whole bomb situation, taking down Madeline and everything, we can get back to our lives and everything. But for him, it's just like, obviously it's his daughter, it's his child, so it's a very different conversation, so obviously he's a little upset with Jane with this whole thing. So, but obviously working with, Tasha's memories and stuff like that, they were able to piece together where the device is most likely being stored at right now. What's interesting though is Rich actually goes to see her, and he's like, are you okay? She's like, yeah, I came back positive. And he's like, oh, positive as in everything's okay? She's like, positive as in I'm pregnant. I was like, okay, I was like, holy shit. I was like, the moment she said positive, I was like, wait, you're pregnant? I was like, Reed's babe? I was like, oh dude, because I think that's obviously, there's a sadness and a beauty to it, because at least this way there will always be a part of Reed with her. So, but it's a situation that I immediately was like, that's what explains because like I said earlier, it looked like she had an envelope of money or something like that. I wasn't sure what it was, but I was like, it wasn't, because like Rich would know if it was like a pregnancy test or something like that. But picking up from the store, it's like he gave her money and she was able to buy one, I think, or maybe buy a few, do other stuff. But it's like, holy crap, wait, it's Reed's baby. So it's like, what are you going to do? And obviously for Tasha, it's not something she's going to really explain. It's like, she's like, you're going to keep this to yourself. And he's like, I get it. Like, because even at one point, Tasha early in the episode already kind of blamed herself. She's like, because Reed was actually wanting to transfer, but then she convinced him to stick around. It's like, yeah, you're actually kind of halfway good at this. Given enough time, you'll be really great at it. But it's like, so let's do this. So she convinced him to stay. She's like, if I had let him go, he wouldn't be. And it's like, don't even do that. Because Reed was always, like, if it wasn't that, like, you had a dangerous job. Like, regardless of the situation you were in, like, any of you could have ended up dead. You're part of the FBI. It kind of sadly comes with the territory. So it's like Reed would have found a way into the action anyway, and that's us stopping this right now is what he would want too. So I think all that plus now finding out, oh, you're pregnant with his kid, it's a lot. And then she kind of leans on Rich, and then Patterson walks in and it's like, you guys good? He's like, yeah. And so obviously Zapata's like, don't tell anybody. And he's like, all right, you got it, lips sealed, mom's the word. And she stops and he's like, mom's not the word, it's gonna be a different word. I'm gonna come in. He's like, yeah, it's gonna be a different word. So now it's a situation and they're going into the facility. It's like, Zapata, you take the bat. Are you going to freeze up this time? She's like, no, I got it. And so they go in there, and obviously Jane and Kurt find themselves outnumbered and, need cover. But Tasha's freezing again because she's thinking about, like, literally being in the same situation with Reed all those years ago. Once again, like last episode, it's like not being around, always halfway expecting Reed to be there. It makes her freeze and everything because it's like she's so used to him being there and him not to be. But obviously back then, like, she ended up saving his life because someone came out behind the door and she ended up taking him down, saving his life. And then she opens her eyes and she looks across from her and sees him, and he kind of looks at her and just kind of nods like, let's do this. And so she goes in, badass, rolling across the table, bam, 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 going super badass and everything. So luckily everything worked out, and they're like, you're good? She's like, I'm good. So luckily everything kind of worked out in the end. But I thought it was sweet, the ending and everything like that, because he was like, Zapata, you saved my life and everything. So he's like, I owe you. And it's like, because she was suggesting, like, oh, because obviously there was a whole conversation about her dating someone, and it's like, oh, he was like, she's like, yeah, I dumped him because, like, Reed was like, oh, maybe he wasn't the right guy for you. So maybe there were hints of it even then that maybe neither one of them was really willing to really see. But you can see, I guess, the little sparks, but who knows if even they recognized it at the time, if it was something else. I think because it took him obviously years to find out that it was something else, so, but yeah, I mean, but even though it's, kind of sad because it's like, it's a reminder that Reed's not there, but I think for her it's a thing of just knowing, like, hey, but she still has those memories, just like them, like, she still has a long life of memory, 10 full years of memories with Reed, getting to know him, so, and their story. So I think for her, that's kind of something at least she can hold on to, especially with having this baby, which Patterson's like, what's going on between you and Zapata? He's like, nothing. And she's like, come on, like, no more secrets. Like, he's like, I was like, is he going to tell her? It's like, oh, he's like, Zapata made a move on me and I rejected her. And Patterson's like, well, fine. I would have loved if he actually put her. I thought he was like, really? Come on. I thought he was going to make more of a fuss and be like, what? That's so hard to believe. But he's like, the fact of the matter is, Zapata will tell. If it's something, I'm not saying it is, but if it is, Zapata will tell us in time. It's like, yes, she'll kind of take things on her own stride. It's like, yes, she will tell us. So kind of leave it at that. I even love the whole, I forgot what he called himself, and he called her Paddington Bear. She's like, no, he's like, no, sorry, can't change it. That's our nicknames and stuff like that. And he came up with no one. She's like, no, that one's terrible. So I was like, oh, that's sweet. Which is so interesting because let's not forget there was a storyline last season about Patterson wanting to adopt too. So I'm like, but I think also like obviously I think it's actually going to be a good thing when the truth comes out about like her being pregnant, because I'm like, oh my god, they have something to celebrate. There's literally all this like terrible shit, like it just feels like they're struggling to win, so they need a win, and her being pregnant would be, granted they'd put her on the sidelines if they found out, but still. So, but obviously Jane and Kurt make up, because for her, it's like, if something happens while we're separated, I don't want this to kind of be the last thing between us, like us fighting and stuff like that. She's like, I'm getting used to this whole new normal, and so sometimes I'm going to make the right choice and sometimes I'm not going to. And in this case, I made the wrong choice. But the fact of the matter is, they ended up making up, especially considering what the hell goes down. Because at first he's like, okay, and they're going separate ways. I was like, he's going to go and track down. He's going to lead. They're going to be like, all right, he's going to somehow manage to get to the U.S. by himself or something like that. I mean, granted, he doesn't have the funds to do that, but I was thinking like he was just like, they get back to the base. Wait, where's Kurt? Wait, he's not with you? He's not here? He hasn't gotten here yet. And then we find out he'd bailed and like actually went to go try and see Beth. And that's what I thought was going to happen. But then Jane gets attacked and it's like, wait, what? Then she hears Kurt's voice. and then it's like he's getting taken by the Dabrazon, and then like Jane can't do anything because she's bleeding because she got shot. It's like, Jesus, everything went wrong just like that, you know. So it's like, shit. So, and obviously like not everyone was taken care of, or, you know, during the operation. So like people obviously some of the Dabrazon had already gotten away, but it's like, oh, they were waiting to snatch them up. So now it's going to be a thing of like, I'm sure they're going to take him straight to Madeline so she can get information out of him, like, oh, where's the rest of the team and stuff like that. I'm sure Whites is going to possibly be there. I also forgot to talk about it because like obviously like something popped up about Brianna. Like obviously I guess they get alerts about like anyone that was a part of the team and everything, and Brianna pops up and they're like, oh wait, and I doubt she's missing. It's like, yeah, this had to be Madeline. So it's like, geez, so that's that too. So a lot of interesting things. I'm curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. Now that, you know, Kurt's in the enemy's hand, Jane's out in the field, but she's injured. So getting in contact with him, not unless she has to like struggle to make it back to the base, or not unless it's a thing of like she bandages herself up and tries to go after. I mean, she'd have to meet up with the team to find out where to go to even begin looking for, you know, Kurt. So it's going to be interesting to see what this all looks like in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.